now what we have is a session that will be led by Bruce. That's going to be an interactive session, as interactive as we want. Sure. As interactive as we want. We have sort of 90 minutes bookmarked for this, so there's a chance to do things, a chance to hopefully have a slightly more casual and relaxed session for this, and then we'll have another break after that before we go into 2 more talks this afternoon. The only other announcement is that thanks everyone for doing your homework assignments. I really like the vibe of this because everyone immediately started typing things and was completely silent into the Google Doc. So that's great, but we're gonna try and collate some of those, some of the themes and threads that showed up. And so you'll start to see some of those things get edited around. But in the meantime, Bruce, sure. Take it away, thanks.
All right. For those, I guess, it's Amy and Ruben, maybe. Can you hear me? Yeah. All right.
Yes.
Cool. Thanks.
Yes.
Awesome. We'll see whether you hear the audio and stuff as well. All right. So we're going to go through a couple of slides talking about the development of the Highcharts Sonification Studio web app, the genesis of it, where it came from, the purpose that we have for it, and then I'm going to give you a tour of the software itself and kind of do a worked example to show you how you can load in data and make sounds. If you want to follow along, there is a web page. The web page supports this little workshop. The QR code that's shown on the screen is points anyone to it. There's also a URL hanging off my web page, and these slides are available in the Files Google Drive. So Amy, I'm not sure how much you want to follow along, but to the extent that you do, you can just listen along, or you can actually dive in as well. Okay, so having said all of that, I am Bruce Walker. Delighted to share some thoughts about the Sonification Studio, and we'll start with some history. Back in the day, when I was getting into sonification, and as many of us have said already, and you'll hear more later, I'm sure, there were many tools built. But typically, it was a graduate student built a tool to support his or her graduate research, and then that student graduated and went off and worked somewhere else, never did any more sonification. The tool died, right? Withered. Also, many of those tools were for astronomy or for chemistry or for something very specific, and they were not general purpose tools. So we decided that it would be useful to have a general purpose software package that could take your data, allow you to interact with it in a spreadsheet-like way, like Microsoft Excel, and then create visual graphs, animations, and sonifications all in one package. Who might be a user for this? Well, it could be as simple as someone like a school teacher who's trying to teach the concepts of math or something to their students, and they have a blind student in their class. Or it could be a scientist who's trying to convey more sophisticated data. But anyone who would make a visual graph, they could make a multimodal graph now. We'll say more about sort of these different use cases, but we designed and developed this in collaboration with the entire ICAD community, and it went on for about 15 years. The first tool was built in Java, and Java, as you know, is kind of no more, right? People don't use, well, nobody uses Java except the people who use Java. So we saw one of the challenges of building an app, like in an application like in Java, is that you had to download it. And even when Java was hot and trendy, If you're a school teacher, you may not have administrative access to the computers that are in your classroom, as one example, right? So there were some hurdles, there were some pain points. The bottom line is that as web technologies evolved, web audio evolved, it became more possible to make a version of the Sonification sandbox as a web app that you wouldn't have to download, that could support all the users and what have you. So we built this Sonification sandbox, and then Highcharts at the same time was developing web-based data visualization tools. We ended up in a partnership with Highcharts, where they were interested in making their graphs and charts more accessible to people who use screen readers, or to people who couldn't see them. They wanted to make them multimodal. So they came and said, "What do you know about sonification?" I'm like, "Just a little bit." As it turns out, it was a match made in heaven, as one could imagine. We said, why don't we use your technology to do the visualization? And we've already sort of figured out what a pretty good user interface might be like. So we did. We had this partnership, Georgia Tech and Highsoft. Highsoft is the company that makes Highcharts. And we built a new tool. We figured out what to call it, to use sonification and the history of what we had done, and to reflect the contributions of Highcharts. And so we built this Highcharts Sonification Studio, or as we affectionately call it, the HSS. Okay. So this tool is a web app. You just go to sonification.highcharts.com. You click on the go to the app link, and away you go to this website. It runs in most browsers now. I think people find Google Chrome to be the most flexible, most compliant, if you will, but it runs in all of the major platforms. And I'll give you a tour of it in a moment. In addition to the Highchart Sonification Studio web app, we have lots of other resources. So the studio itself, but also there's a whole library of training how-to videos. Many thanks to Aura Walmer and others who were part of creating some of those tutorials. And then we also wrapped a tutorials GitHub site around the tutorials. So there's the YouTube videos, just plain tutorial videos. And then this GitHub site has links to those tutorials, but also links to data and data files and other examples and so on. So there's a whole ecosystem to learn how to get started with this tool. So on this, if you go to these, the links that this QR code takes you to, there's a website on a web page on my website, which is just hosting this particular workshop. It describes the goals of the workshop, and then it has links to these tutorial videos and what have you. I'll also acknowledge that this demo that I'm going to give you is easier to do with two people, and Aura and I have done this as a team at ICAD. So if I'm stumbling from one application to another in my on my desktop, then imagine it were smoother. All right, so we have all these things here. Okay, so I'll take a moment just to pause and see if there are any questions about the history or anything that people are curious about for this. So Carla's asking what language we're developing this in, and it's all in a web app. It's all in TypeScript. So TypeScript is a flavor of JavaScript, and we had to code it from the ground up. So rather than trying to port the old Java code, which we might have done, it was just as easy to write it from the ground up. So it's all built on TypeScript for cross-platform multi-browser support.
You guys design for mobile and tablet too, or is this mostly laptop?
So the question, do we design for, does this run on other mobile or tablet platforms?
Not quite. Is the UI UX good? I know it runs on it, but can you effectively use it on it?
Yeah, so the clarification, is it effective? Is it good? Is the UI good? I don't know what good is, but you can run these apps on your phone effectively. They're just web pages. And so some of when you'll see that the interface is quite dense. There's a lot of options. And so it's not the kind of thing you would really want to do on your phone, but certainly on a tablet. But it's just a web front end. And if we needed to make a simplified version of it for whatever purpose, then we could make a light version of it. That would be straightforward. We've done that before with the Sonification sandbox. So if there are any pain points that we identify or any use cases where this tool is not cutting it, then we can talk. It is not meant to solve all problems for all people, but yeah. What else? We good? All right, if there's anything else, then just jump in. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch to the actual Sonification Highcharts studio. And so that's at sonification.highcharts.com. And I'm going to give you a tour of the interface. And again, just shout out questions. Because this is a web app, we can and have attempted to make this as accessible as possible. So it should be screen reader compliant. It should be play nice with various accessibility tools. I know that Amy has played around with it a little bit and has identified some places where that is not necessarily the case. And so, it's a work in progress. It's not a commercial product. It's freely available. So we'll fix whatever we can as soon as we hear about it. The easiest way to think about this, the mental model, is to think about Microsoft Excel, where you have a data grid, and at the very top of this interface, you have a data tab and a chart tab. When you load up the application, the chart tab is highlighted. You see an image of a chart, of a graph, if you will, and then on the right-hand side, you see some settings panels. But let's start by going over to the data panel or the data tab. And it looks just like a spreadsheet because that's exactly what it is. It's a very simple spreadsheet. It has some capabilities. There are grid tools that you can do. You can use to fill and multiply and add and transpose and all those kinds of things. So if you have data, you can manipulate it here in this grid. Highcharts has just created their own data grid, their own spreadsheet that they have built for their own Highcharts proper, the Highcharts data visualization tools. So they've created their own spreadsheet. That spreadsheet has now been integrated into the Sonification Studio And later this week will be released, there will be a new release of this HSS, which will incorporate the new, more powerful Highcharts grid. But it will still feel the same. It's a spreadsheet. If you don't want to use the spreadsheet, say you have your data in a Google Sheet, then you can directly hook your Google Sheet up into this and bypass the spreadsheet here. There's a very simple mechanism for that. You, instead of clicking on, or you click on the data source being Google Sheets, and then there's a process where you enter a Google API key. And then after that, the URL for the, so let's do that. Why not? I'll do that. If I can get to the, all right. So I have a Google API key, and the Google API key is in the documents that are available. So I'm going to just click on that. The publisher of the data needs to have this API key, not every user. And they share that with you. Okay, then you have your Google Sheet, and they say, okay, what's the URL for your Google Sheet? And let me say, okay, I've got this Google Sheet, pardon me, handy here. I put in the URL and I click finish. And now there's no grid. Where'd my data go? Well, it's in the Google Sheet. So it doesn't show up. We don't duplicate it here. We can just go to our Google Sheet, look at our data here, and then it's plugged into our HSS. Don't believe me? Well, let's go look at the chart. Now the chart is completely different because the chart is pulling from the Google Sheet. So as you can see, you can grab data from whatever source. All right. Say I look at my data and I say, well, I don't want to use that data. I don't want to use my Google Sheet. I want to import data. I can import CSV data. So I can go grab some CSV data. Let me see if I find some data sets, COVID. I can go get a data set. It's just a CSV data file. I bring it in. Oh, I have to select my grid. And here's my, oops, do I have to do that again? Sorry. Of course, it'll probably not work, you know, whatever. There it is. Okay, so I can import from, I can type in, I can import from a CSV data file. In the new grid, I can copy and paste. I can link to a Google Sheet. And hopefully you see that this architecture supports flexibility. So if a Google Sheet is not what you want some other database or some other data source, we can build a connector. So that's all pretty straightforward. If CSV is not the file format you want to use Excel, we can build that connector. That's pretty straightforward as well. All right. So we can get our data in a lot of different ways. The grid has some tools. If I want to fill a column or want to add additional data or whatever I need to do, I can do some of those things here in the data tab. Okay. Pause for questions about getting data into it. Question?
So I didn't find something right with 2 lines of header, like 2 rows of headers.
Yeah.
Is there a way?
There is a way to delete rows in the new grid. This one that you're seeing here does not have that because they used a third-party package and they couldn't modify it. So yes. Alternatively, just go delete it in your CSV file and re-import it. I mean, sometimes you find that that's the way. This is not a super sophisticated data pre-processing kind of thing. If you want to, clean up your data in R or whatever you're gonna do, then do it there. And then just import it. But yeah, that's, I mean, all these things. This is not solving every problem, right? And yeah, other questions on that? Getting data in? I think you get the vibe for that. Okay.
Yeah, Bruce,
then-
actually, this is Amy. Sorry, I had a question.
ma'am.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
It just seems to me that even with the Google Sheets example, and you said, well, it won't display within the web page. And why would you need it? Because you've got the Google Sheet in another file, you know. It would be convenient, I would think, to have the data there. So so you say, oh yeah, okay, here, it's come in the way I expected, just almost as confirmation. But that's a minor thing. If it's technically challenging, then maybe it's not worth it.
It's not technically challenging. It was just a design decision saying we didn't need to maintain a copy of your data, because then if you go and change the data on your Google Sheet, it's updated in the.
See. Oh,
right,
okay.
because that can be changed live.
All right, and it'll okay.
And so it's updated in the Highcharts Sonification Studio will update the data that you get. There's a constant push and pull from the or constant pull from the Google Sheet.
Got it. Okay.
So it will update. We would have to then update a copy of the data.
The display, yeah, okay,
the displayed version, which is not a technological challenge. It was just a choice that we thought was not necessary.
Right.
But if there's a use case for having a copy of the data, then cool.
Yeah, okay. Now I get it now about why you chose the way you did. Thanks.
Yeah, and you guys know this. When you make software, you make choices, and doesn't mean you're, and this is all open source, by the way, in case someone wants to do their own thing. Okay, so let's look at the chart. Now, we click on the chart tab, and that activates the chart tab, and I'll give you the tour. Right below the chart tab is a play bar. So I'm not sure why, but there's supposed to be a play. It's a triangle. I could probably reload this web page and grab that. A stop, a loop. There's a bar that shows where you are in the play, and easy access to the loudness, the volume. Right below that is the chart window, and the chart window leans into the Highcharts visualization tools. So it is full featured. It is very rich. It has all of the capabilities that you could expect in a modern charting tool. In this case, it's an x-axis, a y-axis. It's got two columns of data. I'll go back to the data tab, and you see there's the first column, the A column here are dates, and the B column is USA total cases. The C column is Spain total cases, and no surprise, these are COVID data. Okay. Directly below the visual chart is a panel with text description. This is a work in progress, and the idea is that you generate a text description based on the data. And in this case, it does generate something that is kind of useless. That is also being developed, actively developed between Highcharts in collaboration with ETS, Educational Testing Service, and some others to build a better way of describing the charts. But it's actually kind of a big project to figure out how do you describe a graph or a chart? At what level of detail? Is there sort of a template? You start with the x-axis, then the y-axis. Do you talk about the min, max, range? Do you describe the data? How do you do that? And it's surprising, but there's not actually any kind of standard. There are some folks who have done something like that over the years, but so it's there, but I'm just going to close that panel and kind of ignore it for now, just because it's a work in progress. We'll come back to that description concept later. All right, now moving to the right across the top, we have some oval buttons. The first one is the project button. So if you wanted a new project or open an existing project or save this as a project, that's where you start. This is a good time for me to talk about project files. So if you think about Microsoft Excel, you could load into Microsoft Excel your data from a CSV file, just the raw data into Excel. The Excel file that you could save has the raw data, but it also has lots of other stuff saved in there. Any graphs that you've made, any formulas that you've added, any formatting, anything that you've made bold, any sorts or whatever else. That is added on top of your data. So the raw data plus. And you save it out as a .xlsx file, an Excel file. The same concept applies here. You can load your data in and you save it out as a fully encapsulated transportable Highcharts Sonification Studio project file, HSSP. So it's just your data plus all of the renderings bundled together. That is a standalone file that you can email. You can put it on a web page. You can download it. You could text it to somebody. It's just a file. It's a JSON file. And you can, so I could create just like I could send someone an Excel file, they would open it up, they would have the raw data, but they would also have the graphs and the analyses and other things that I've done. Scott?
You have Google Drive and you save it JSON. Does it save the copy data there, or is it save the URL to Google Drive to share it with somebody? It changes Google Drive.
So if I save this project, it will save a local copy, right? In this case, it'll take your title like test chart, add .hssp. Actually, it'll be test_chart.hssp saved on your downloads or wherever you save files. Then you can do with it whatever you want. It's not touching your data. It's not doing anything. It's making a local copy, a file that incorporates all of that stuff. Yeah. And I'm not sure if this was part of your question, but if I ingested my data from a Google sheet, it has made a local copy internal to this software. It will save out the local copy as part of the HSSP file.
That was my question.
Okay. Yeah.
Then if someone changed the Google Sheet afterwards,
It will.
obviously it wouldn't have that change if I load the project file.
Correct. That is correct. It is a snapshot. Yeah. So I can create a new project, open an existing HSSP file, or I can save the project out to my local drive. I can import data, as you've already seen. At this time, only CSV files are supported, but you can certainly have any other files format that you wanted to. And what is particularly interesting here is the export capabilities. I'll show those to you, and we'll probably get to them a little bit later. But to start with, you open this export dropdown, and there are many formats. So you can create and save a whole bunch of different artifacts. So I can create a video, which is going to be an animated chart plus audio. So everything all together. I can save just the audio. I can save the audio as a WAV file, or I can save the audio as a MIDI file. I can save an image or a vector image in SVG format. I can save the CSV data themselves. So if I imported something and I made some changes to my data and I added columns and did whatever else I wanted to, I could take that the data in my spreadsheet and save that out directly. I can save the text description, so the capabilities in there to scrape out the text description, even though at this point that text description is not very useful, right? I can also kick out a Highcharts a JavaScript configuration file, and I'll talk about that in just a second as well, or an HTML file where all of the information that I've got here is encapsulated into an HTML file, which I could then add to a web page. So basically, it's just a little wizard to give you the HTML code to be able to embed this into your resources. Okay. Let's wind back a moment and think about who we were thinking might be able to use this. Imagine the school teacher who has some simple data about weather or math or something. They want to make a visualization and a sonification. They want to create some artifacts, maybe a little video, and then they're going to embed that in a PowerPoint slide, or they're going to show that in their classroom. Or if you're a scientist, you want to make something for a presentation, you create the artifact like the video, and you can embed that in your PowerPoint. You go to your conference and you show the visual and you play it, and people can see the animation and hear the audio as well. So you can imagine how this starts with data, goes through this tool, and then ends up in a bunch of artifacts that you can use in whatever way you need to. Or of course, you can still send the HSSP file around to someone if they want it or need it. Okay. This Highcharts configuration prompts me to point out that Highcharts is a massive set of InfoVis tools, right? We don't have all of the capabilities of Highcharts embedded in this HSS tool. So there may be things that you can do in Highcharts, what we call Highcharts proper, that you can't do in this toy tool, in this light version, if you will. But you can still do a lot of them, and you can take all of what you've done, migrate immediately over to Highcharts proper, and get her done in the big tool. So some of you may have used like tools like SAS or SPSS or whatever, right? Some things you can do with the GUI, and some things you have to go to syntax and do coding, right? And some things you simply have to go with bigger tools. All right. So that is the sort of high level tour of most of the interface. What's left are the visual and the audio configurations and settings. So on the right-hand side, we have these panels. Currently, the visual panel is selected. If I go to the right here, I can click on audio and I can highlight the audio panel, and that gives me access to audio settings. But let's start with the visual as well. Within the visual tab, you see global settings and data series settings. So the global settings are things that pertain to the entire visual thing, like the title of the graph. The data series settings are specific to each column of your data, each series of data. So let's look at some of these examples. The global settings, if I scroll down, there's the basic settings, like the chart title. So let me change the chart title here to COVID cases cumulative. Did I spell that right? I don't know, close enough. Right? And then I'm going to say USA versus Spain as a subtitle. And exactly as you'd expect, when I change it on the right-hand side, it updates in the graph, the visual graph. right where you'd think it should be. If you don't want a subtitle, you just leave that empty. If you don't want a chart title, you don't have to have it. I can also say, well, what is the chart type? Let me show you some of the examples here. I can have, what we have here is a smoothed area chart. So it's a line with the area between that line, below that line, down to the x-axis is filled. And the line itself is slightly smoothed. But I could also have just a simple line chart. So I select that, and you'll see in the graph immediately that the fill below the lines goes away. Or I can have a smoothed line or an area. The area fills below, and I can smooth that area. I can have a column, which is like a histogram. Now I've got a bunch of columns, and I can also throw this as a scatter plot. Now, because there are so many data points, the scatter plot looks like a line plot. But I can also zoom in here. I can zoom in with the mouse. It's easier with the mouse than it is with, and so now when I've zoomed in, you can see that there are all of these data points because they are discrete data points. But if I reset my zoom, you'll see it'll zoom out again, and all of those data points look like a line. All right, so let me go back to my smoothed area. And as you see, it's fairly straightforward, all of these things about the global settings. Okay. Go ahead. Okay, so now I have settings, global settings for the x-axis. I don't have an x-axis title here. So what would be my suitable title here? Well, it's actually a date. But you look at the numbers along the x-axis that we have here, and they're weird numbers. They're very large numbers, right? Well, it's because the default setting for the x-axis is just a linear axis, but I can change it to be a date, and now it handles that, the data set is exactly as you'd expect, because if I go back to my data, you see that the first column are in fact dates. Right? So I tell it that these are dates. It says, oh, thanks, cool. Now it's got that. So I can change my x-axis title, and I could say, let's just call it date. And when I do that, the title appears below the x-axis. All right, I can turn that on or off, the whole x-axis on or off just by clicking a checkbox. I can filter by having the minimum or my maximum, so I can truncate my data if I wanted to. So that's cool. Those are all kind of global x-axis things. Similarly, I can do global y-axis. I don't have a title, and I can say cases of COVID, right? Whatever want to do that. Again, my x-axis, I could leave it as linear. I could set it up as logarithmic if I wanted to. Why not? But I'll just leave it as linear because that seems to make sense. Again, I can turn the x and y axis on or off if I need to, and I can set the minimum or the maximum to truncate my data if I wanted to. Then we have, advanced. Well, it's kind of not really advanced, but just other. I can enable the legend. At the bottom of the chart, there is a legend, and you'll see that it has two entries. The first one has a little blue square and it says USA total cases, and the other one has a little green square and says Spain total cases. It pulled those directly from the header of the data file, just like you'd expect. All right. If I want to change those, then I can, and I'll show you just in a sec. So I can enable the legend or I can turn it off if I want, okay? I can show data series labels, meaning I can just show on the screen exactly what the blue region represents, in this case, USA total cases, and the green region represents Spain total cases. I can have a tooltip, and when I mouse over, it mouses over either just the area that I'm mousing over. In this case, I'm mousing over Spain, and the tooltip that appears is giving me the values of Spain cases. And when I mouse over the USA cases, then I just get that tooltip showing the USA cases. If I click on the shared tooltip button, then both of those appear in a harmonized, unified tooltip. Again, this is all the kind of things that you'd expect in a fairly straightforward modern graphing capability. We can invert the chart just for kicks and giggles. Sometimes that's useful, but in this case, we'll go back to where we were. I can zoom the x-axis or allow people to zoom on the x-axis only, or both x and y, or just the y-axis. And that means that allows people to use their mouse or their trackpad to zoom in or out on the graph in various ways. There's more things about data grouping here. If you have stacked bar charts, for example, you want to have them all grouped together, you can do things here as well. All right, let me run up to the data series settings. For each of these columns in your data set, each one of those is a data series. Here we have the first series identified as USA total cases. I can give it a name, USA cases. And I'm going to get rid of all the hyphens and underscores and stuff. And you'll see that that immediately populates in the legend below the graph. Now, if I want to change the Spain one, I could do the same thing. I select that series and I can say Spain cases, and there it is. Okay. For each of these cases, or each of these data series, I can turn them on or off. So let me turn off the Spain cases for now. I just click one button, and it's supposed to go away. All right, well, that may be a bug. Not sure. Okay, so for each of these cases, let's, I like the USA as a blue. We'll leave that as default, but let me change the Spain cases to something, I don't know, red, Spanish red. All right, so you can do that. There you go. I can change the opacity if I want to, and so the red becomes sort of more pink, or I can leave it as opaque, whatever you want to do. Line style, you can change the line, whether you want dots, dashes. Again, all of the things you'd expect. Should I show this this series in the legend or not? Sometimes your data set might have 15 columns, and you only want to show three sets of data on your graph. And the other 12 columns you don't want to show in your legend, and you don't want to show them on the chart, so you can just take them out of your legend. This is not updating perfectly, so I'm not sure if that's a bug in the where that's coming from. You can show the data point labels, in which case it will print on the graph all of the values of those data point labels, which is generally not very helpful unless you have many fewer data points. Okay. All right, so that's the gist of the global settings for the visual, the settings that you can adjust on a series by series basis for the visuals. And then finally, I know we get to the audio. Okay. The same general design approach follows here. We've got your basic settings that apply to the overall audio that you're going to get here. For example, the playback speed and also the playback detail. If you have millions of data points, you may not want to play every one of them. That's also true when you have a visual graph. You don't necessarily show every single data point. There's potentially some sampling that you do to make your visual graph. Here we can do the same thing, and this play detail ranges from 1 to 15, where 1 is very sparse. It's going to pick sort of every few points and play those, whereas 15 is all of the data. Feels like that ought to be a different scale from 1 to 100 or something, percentage. Question.
So that play detail is like the sampling interval from your data series?
Functionally, yes.
Not smooth, like a level smoothing.
Correct. Yeah, it's basically how lossy is it's an inverse of lossiness, right? When you're playing this, as you'll see in a second, there is a vertical bar that shows up on the graph that indicates where we are as the sound plays, and it results in sort of a little animation of the graph. You can turn that on or turn that off when the graph is being played. Okay. You can also decide whether to show the tooltip when you're playing. So in this case, I'm scrolling over, the vertical bar is there and the tooltip appears, but we don't necessarily want the tooltip when we are recording our data. So again, finally, in this basic settings of global audio settings, you can play your data series simultaneously or sequential. I feel like we should play. So you start to hear how this goes. So let me play this, and those online, tell me if you actually hear this playing at all.
Yes.
Okay, so you heard two sort of streams of audio that represent the data here. And they were played simultaneously, but I could also play them sequentially, like this. So you play one and then the other one, and you can switch the order of them because depending on what you're trying to accomplish, or if you want to listen sort of to one and then listen to the other, that might be a setting that is useful for you. One of the things that we often hear from Amy and others, rightly so, is that I don't get it, right? I heard it, but what does it mean? And so sometimes when you're scaffolding and you're teaching people how to listen to your sonification, you can say, well, listen to this first, and then listen to this one, and you can hear them. Now let me play them together. And so you can build it up from the ground up. Okay, so those are the basic settings for audio. There's some default audio settings like the minimum note. What is the frequency range or the pitch range of this? Minimum, maximum. By default, the audio pans from left to right as it plays. That's just an automatic redundant coding so that you have this sense of flow from left to right in the audio space, just like the cursor is flowing across the screen. You can hear that as well. You may not hear the panning from left to right if we don't have stereo speakers. Okay, but you can also turn that panning off if you want. All right, now the other things that are here in this section is what we call global context cues. If you know anything about my work, quite often I'll give a demo and I'll say, bum, 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 bum. Am I getting richer? Am I getting poorer? Many people will, right? But it's the equivalent of me drawing a line on the graph, so here's a graph. Am I getting richer or poorer? Am I getting richer or poorer?
Well, the axes are now tilted.
Oh,
Okay. This squiggle, this line on the page is not a graph. In third grade, if you handed in a piece of paper with a line like this, you would fail, right? Yeah, in the old days, right? Now, the teacher's going to say, you need a y-axis and an x-axis, and you need tick marks, and you need labels, and you need all of the other stuff that we call context to allow you to interpret the visual representation of your data. Bum, 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 bum. Am I getting richer or getting poorer? Now your response should be, well, you haven't told me enough. I don't have enough context to answer your question. And I would say, thank you. That's exactly the point, right? You need to convey to the listener all kinds of context, the equivalent of x-axis context, right? So can you be my sonification of data?
What would you like to do?
Just sing some blah, 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 blah.
Bum, 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 bum.
Keep going.
Bum, 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 bum.
Yes, he got entrained with my, but I was tapping, thank you. I was tapping x-axis, right? That's every month. All right. So that gives you a sense of how long this, this financial data or whatever. So give someone some x-axis context, right? Can I do that in this tool? Yes, of course we can. So I can play clicks, right? Using, say, an instrument called chop or whatever other MIDI instrument you want to do in there. It has a loudness, it has a fixed pitch, a duration and a pan, right? And I can do that always, and it is a little, right. Yeah, so that is a little, that one is not catching the, it should be catching the date. So it should reflect whatever the x-axis is. But I'm seeing bugs. So I'm not going to go into all the details there. I'll show you some examples of this. But then on the data series, again, I can do the audio, say for my USA cases, what musical instrument do I want? Let's say saxophone. And for my Spanish, what would be a good instrument for Spain? Trumpet, of course. Whatever, it could be sine wave. So we have built-in sine, triangle wave, those kinds of things. I'll pull this down. So you can see like some things like flute and vibraphone and piano and what have you, but also some wobbles and why would you have wobble? What if you want to make an error bar? All right. So we have all kinds of things, kicks and taps, chops, shakers, wind, filtered noise. These are all just tools that you can put in. Yes, question. So these are crappy built-in MIDI web audio kind of thing.
Can you repeat the question, Bruce? Can you repeat
I'm sorry,
the
the question is, thanks for the reminder, where do we get the MIDI sounds, the MIDI library? And it's just whatever's built into web audio. We drag in some of our own MIDI instruments just so that we have a subset there. You can also export all of these things out to MIDI, and then you've got the MIDI code. You can drag it into GarageBand or to whatever else and use whatever post-processing or instrument libraries you wanted to do there too. Yeah. So for any of these data series, I can change the sounds. Let me go back now and play this. The audio for one is I nearly said trumping the other, which is actually what's happening here. But you can change the pitch, for example, and the pitch can be default, whatever the default value is. But I can also have a fixed value, or I can have it mapped onto the data from my data set. I can have the pan, where is it from left to right in audio space? Again, I can have it whatever the default is, or I can have it fixed. So I could have all of the data from the USA put in the left audio space, left sort of ear, and all of the data from Spain put in your right ear. And maybe you're thinking, oh, this is on one side of the Atlantic and the other side of the Atlantic, and it might kind of make sense to you to keep those sources spatially separated. Same with loudness. Again, I can have the default loudness, or I can have it fixed, or I can map it, and you can do redundant mapping. So I could have sounds that are mapping in pitch and in volume. So what I could do, for example, here, let me go back to my Spain. What I'm going to do is make my USA triangle wave. The pitch is going to be default. The pan, I'm going to put fixed. It's going to be in your left ear. And the volume is going to also be mapped onto, map your volume to your Y. So as your Y goes up, your loudness will also go up.
But you could add other columns in your data and map it to those.
Absolutely. Yes. So what this will do is similar to, I think Paul Vickers was getting at this idea of, I'm not sure when he asked his question earlier, whether he was like cautioning against sort of journalistic sensationalism or something like that. I'm more neutral. Like, these are communication tools. And if you want to be sensational, the tools should support that. If you want to be neutral, sure, why not? Because you have communicative intent. You are trying to convey a message with your graphs or your charts. In science, we pretend that we don't, but really we do, right? So if I want to make this sound, I want to make the sort of pseudo-political commentary that the amount of cases in the US was dramatically more than Spain, then it can get higher in pitch and can also get louder. So you can do all kinds of things, and I'm just kind of plunking around here, but you can see note duration, low pass filter, high pass filter, tremolo. Let's see, this is USA cases. I'm gonna turn off the Spain cases for now. So we can go back to the USA just to poke around here. So our tremolo, I'm gonna map that to Y as well. Okay, so as I play this. So it started very quiet, but I could have changed the range, made a logarithm or whatever. But now I can make it higher in pitch and louder and more vibrato or tremolo and like, hair on fire kind of thing if I wanted to. And all of these settings for all of these data series then can be save the project as that HSSP file. So all of the work that we did today to create this wonderful graph gets saved, and I can come back to it tomorrow, or I can send it to somebody, right? So let's open up a few existing HSSP files. Let me see if I go to some of these examples from COVID, not the data files. We don't need the data sets. Here's my COVID case. There's the .hssp file. I just open that up and it tells me this was from an older version. That's fine. And it loads it. There it is. And you can see that it's very similar to what we were playing with, but it's slightly different because I chose different settings for color and whatever else there. I can play this. Okay, so you can see how I could bring in that project. There are the data, there's the charts, and the visual and the audio settings are all retained. So let me bring in some other projects. So you can see here's temperature by time. This is a single series of data. And this one is from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, a data set that Amy and her colleagues provided from the Jason vent probe. And it is basically, if I recall correctly, there's a probe on the end of an arm, manipulator arm, on a deep sea submersible. The deep sea submersible approaches an underwater thermal vent and inserts its probe into the heart of this underwater hot water vent. Okay, and then pulls the probe back out. So it's sitting there doing whatever it's doing, and then game on. So the visual sync is a little bit out of sync here, but I'll play it again. Right. So I can trim the data. I can just, let me just do this here. Now I've just selected a shorter chunk of data. All right, Carla?
So this might be confusing, but how much of that is the movement of the probe and how much of it is temperature change?
So this is the temperature as recorded by the thermometer.
So it's fixed.
The probe is fixed on the end of the arm, and the arm is extended into the water, and it's no, it's getting closer. It's moving closer to the heart of the vent, right? And then
where is it going out?
it's probably moving. It's moving laterally, or it's drifting somewhat. And so, or maybe it's going past, because the vent is actually spewing a column of hot water. And if you go through it to the other side, then it's cooler water on the other side. And then if you pull it back through, so Bottom,
Which part is going in and which part is going out?
I don't from this particular thing. We can correlate this with video, but I really just want to show this kind of as an example of a single stream of data. You can use this for one thing like temperature. It doesn't have to be multiple. You do all kinds of things here. Let's see what other projects. We have examples from sorry, files, older demos. At the Audible Universe workshop in a couple years ago, we gave some examples of this being used for spectral data. Here's an example of a spectral curve. You can play this. So obviously, for whatever reason, the visual play bar is lagging. So visually, globally, I'm going to, under advanced, try to turn that off. Is that X-axis? All right, well, now I've lost it, but oh, that's probably under audio, global, basic, chart play marker. That was not working very well, so we'll turn it off. All right, so I could show you more and more of those things. I can show you, let me do a couple of other things, projects, older demos, additional charts. So we have bar charts. We have like a normal distribution. Say you were a school teacher and you wanted to teach people about normal distribution. You could show your students this curve, which is the typical Bell or Gaussian distribution. You can play it, but we've also got some context cues in there. And again, that lag is kind of misleading. And you're hearing a click, click, click. Visually, you see the black bars, which represent the quartiles of the distribution. So there's a lot of things that you can do. You can do major axes and minor axes. Go back here, additional charts. Tick marks, here's an example of major and minor tick marks. You can put in a number of different ways. You can have your data set, and then visually, you can see that there is the blue line on this graph represents the data, and then the little, small ticks are on the x-axis, and they represent minor tick marks and major tick marks. We can play those. Now, one thing you notice here is that the data points are notes. Bum, 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 bum. So they don't need tick marks because they've got a start and a stop. They give you that, right? So you don't need, the tick marks are redundant, but you could have major tick marks every 10th or every 20th of those notes or whatever you wanted to do. If each one of those data points was a day, you could have every 7th one represent week, 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 right? So lots of things you can do. Okay, I think I'm gonna stop there because this has sort of been a fire hose of examples. and see if there are questions, feedback, thoughts, and then we'll wrap up pretty soon.
Well, let's thank Bruce first, and then we'll move to questions. Questions in the room.
Thank you. This was really cool. I was wondering how many different columns you can play at once?
Yes. So the question is, how many different columns can you play at once? How many data series? And my answer is yes. Many. Just like MIDI, if you can have many channels, like 128, for example, would be pretty easy. It would depend a little bit on your processing capabilities on your phone. It used to be a problem. Nowadays, phones and laptops are pretty powerful. But generally, many. Now, the question, a question might be, well, how many should you play at once, right? That's a whole other thing. And depending on the sophistication, training, and experience of your listener, you might want to just play one, or one plus some context, click tracks, and or sometimes other y-axis context like beep, 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 beep. That might be the maximum of your data. And as your data approach it, beep, 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 right? So one data set, one data series plus some context cues, or two data series, or three, it starts to get a little bit complicado, right? But technologically, many.
Who's going to start?
This is a suggestion, I guess.
Yeah.
Or, well, maybe you didn't have to, but is there a way to save project files without just the customization of the choice?
The question is there a way to save the project file without the data? Like a template.
Yes, I asked that for two reasons. One, you might have so much data that me and a collaborator both already have. I don't want to send them a project file that has that much volume in it by definition. Number two, templates. I want to be able to always start off any of my data charts with these customizations for my particular use cases applied to many different sets of data. So it's like pre-configuring your Excel with certain parameters.
Yeah, and so the answer is not at present, because we have the model of Excel in that you can't save Excel without data, right? It's data plus plus, not just the plus plus. But there's no reason whatsoever why we couldn't. So, and in fact, when you save it as a JavaScript JSON configuration for Highcharts, then that would allow you to swap in and out the data that you use and keep the template aspect of it. So if that's
maybe it's not a HS, the P stands for project, maybe there's also room for a T in the template.
Yeah, an HSST file template. Mm-hmm. Yeah, great.
Use cases.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Yeah.
Have you thought about allowing parametric data? So very often you have something that's still one-dimensional, but it's embedded in 2-dimensional space or 3-dimensional space, like a trajectory, as opposed to just a one-dimensional. And then in the trajectory, you could map 3 dimensions to 3 different aspects of the sound, like pitch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm going to ask a slightly different
question. Does Highcharts allow you to do that? Does Highcharts itself is full?
Yeah, so the paraphrasing the question, can we use parametric data like an equation almost?
Just do time and I give you exponents and coordinates. So it's still a one-dimensional trajectory.
Yeah.
Because we need that for sound.
Right.
But you're thinking that.
So the current version of the Highchart Sonification Studio has a data model that is based on a grid of points. so that you have to give it XY or XYZ data points. If you wanted to, for example, plot y equals sine of x, a sine or a cosine or something like that, we actually generate the data set for that, and then you'd have all the numbers. So in the previous version of the Sonification sandbox, we allowed you to put in a formula, a function, and then we would just sonify that directly, but that hasn't yet made it into this. I'm not entirely sure if I'm answering your question.
So, to use exactly the example, if I have y equals sine t and x equals cosine of t,
Yeah.
that would be the parametric equation for a circular trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
So I would visualize it.
Yep.
Would go around the circle.
Yep.
And then you could have pan the x direction loudness.
Yep.
Y would go, and you
Yes.
tell that the thing is going around.
You could do that with the data.
And the old one you're saying you could.
Yes, and with the new one, in your data grid, you would have to sample the data and then loop, which you can do as well. So it's possible, but it's a bit stretching the built-in capabilities.
We have a question online, so Amy.
Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. I just wanted to put in a vote for a light version. As you pointed out at the beginning, the user interface is a little bit dense for a beginner especially, and it's a little bit hard for me to imagine your average school teacher, as smart and capable as they are, diving into this. I would think it would be daunting at first. So that's one reason to have a light version. A second reason is as you know, pointed out too, I've tried to use it with a screen reader, and the density of the interface, it makes it pretty challenging. And so for that reason as well, to have a light version with fewer options, but because in my workflow, I just want to hear it. I don't care if it's perfect or the instrument I want or whatever, just whatever tone, just do it, and do it quickly and easily, boom, boom, boom. Yeah, if a light version, we would use that a lot, I think, if a light version was available. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that. Harkening back to the history of this, the Sonification sandbox was intended to be everything in there, because we wanted to have a research tool that we could try out. What would panning sound like? What would tremolo sound like? So everything and the kitchen sink was thrown in there. And then we eventually made a light version, because exactly that, the teachers were saying, okay, but I don't need Microsoft Excel. I don't need all of the capabilities. I don't need the power. Just give me a light version. So we built that. The philosophy of creating this Sonification studio was the same kind of thing. Let's put all the power in there and let it serve as a Sonification research tool. Let it serve for anyone who wants to become an expert in this, for whatever purposes, and all of the bells and whistles are in there. And a light version is absolutely on the roadmap. It's just a question of who builds it and when, and what features make it into that light version and what features don't. Another way to go about it is we can customize the interface. So it could be the full-on studio, but you have features hidden, basically. So you can simplify this interface without making a whole separate version. You could have a preferences panel, which would basically say, turn off this and turn off this and turn off that. And then we would have a set of settings, which would basically result in a light version.
Yeah.
You have templates. Nice snazzy names.
2 variables than 3 variables.
Yep. There's other things I'll just add, an embeddable version of this. So basically a player is partially built so that you could take this and embed it as a player, and then you could get rid of all of the configuration tools. So for example, if you wanted to have a visual and auditory graph, a multimodal graph on an exam for students, you could take away all of the ability for them to change it, to modify it, get rid of all the, right? And you just create it and they can listen to it, and that's all they can do. Listen to it as many times as you want, but they can't, you strip away the ability to, you basically suppress those panels.
I had a question.
Yeah.
I saw one of the features that we didn't talk about was this note rounding
Yes.
feature. And that's just rounding to chromatic, I guess, chromatic notes, or is there?
Yep,
is
to MIDI
there-
notes, basically, so chromatic notes, yes.
So is there any sense of some other tools have sort of getting cited to Paul's point, you can choose the notes, so you could selectively pick, not chromatically, but specific scales. Is there any thought, do you have any thoughts about whether that's good or bad or useful to have in this? Because this is kind of, seems to be fully featured everything.
At this point, we have always kept this to the piano as the model, because the notes on the piano are largely equally spaced in perceptual space. They're not equally spaced in frequency, of course, but they're largely equally spaced in perceptual space. So we treated that kind of, we've always treated that as sort of a fairly useful framework. But if you wanted to subsample from that and go with particular chords or, you know, keys, for example, one could, but it's not built in. So again, that's not a very, it's not a use case that we have heard about very often. So it didn't make it into the kitchen sink.
Are there other questions in the room? Otherwise, I think we're probably about to hear a lot of sounds coming out of computers. So. Rose?
I had a technical thing. When I tried to load the project that was in the files chat, the data is like hanging over from the COVID cases. Like it's showing me, it's changed to temperature by time. Is the title.
Yeah.
It's still showing me the COVID data.
Right.
Is that a thing that, is there something I'm not clicking? Or?
No, in Chrome, you need to go to settings, and then under, you basically clear your cache, right? Wherever it is, privacy and security, and then you have to clear your browsing cache, and you don't have to get rid of your browsing history, but just get rid of your cached images and files, delete the data, and that wipes the cache. So it's a caching that in Google Chrome, it's lazy about clearing cache. And probably we should assert that more, but I don't think that a web page can force it, a browser to clear the cache for security reasons. Yeah.
I would think so.
We have time for a little one?
Yep.
I was just curious. I know you didn't demo this with screen reader groups, but I'm curious. Do you, your hover over text has a lot of useful information.
Yep.
Does that work well with screen readers? And is there usability concerns about is there an option to turn that on or off? Because I can imagine sometimes you really want that. And sometimes you just try to move the darn mouse to click something, you don't want to hear it at all. Maybe that's a question for others who use it more often than you.
Yeah, so the question for Amy is, or for Amy's benefit is, the question is text-to-speech capabilities and screen readers. This version does not currently have built-in self-voicing capabilities. That is absolutely in our roadmap for creating the ability to speak out the text of the text description, the x-axis, the y-axis, the descriptions, all of the elements where there's text Can we say that aloud, and can we turn that on or off? And it's yet another configuration panel that has to be implemented.
Or a keyboard shortcut maybe?
There are keyboard shortcuts built in. That is separate, as you know, from screen reader compatibility. And most of the interface and controls are screen reader accessible. To Amy's point, that doesn't make them necessarily usable, right? Because it is so dense, and you can get lost in the details here. But technologically, I believe that all or almost all of the elements are accessible, but that doesn't get you access to the tooltips and the things that are appearing in the visual graph. Amy, do you have any thoughts from your experience?
Yeah, at one point in the past, my screen reader would read out the tooltip contents whenever the tooltip appeared, which I think so. I don't think I invoked it. I think it did it automatically. It was a while ago, so I can't recall, but that was the feature I liked the best, actually, in terms of access and usability. Was, but I want to hear, what are the values, at time equals, 5 days. What is the temperature? What is the whatever? The actual numerical values. I know you could get that if you go back over to your spreadsheet too, but it's nice to get it occasionally while you're experiencing the graph. Just like people with vision, they look over like, oh, there's a maximum. What value is that maximum in Y? Oh, it's 2.3. You need those numbers sometimes. So it was, but it was buggy. I remember that, but this was a couple of years ago, probably now. So
yeah, so I believe that is still in there. I don't use a screen reader on a day-to-day basis, so I'm not sure of that level, but it was intended to reveal as much of the text as we could to the screen reader through the ARIA codes that would allow the screen reader to speak it out. But we still would love to have self-voicing capabilities so that we could have more control over all of that.
Well, I think let's leave it there. We'll be back at 3:15 for our next talk. Sorry, Amy, we will connect you and Bruce.
Yeah, we're already connected. Big time.
Yeah. So we'll be back here at 3:15. There should be more snacks, coffee, and things. And let's really thank Bruce again. This was really great.
We have also collected, or I have attempted to collect everyone's goals and brainstorming themes. We now have a second tab for thematic topics. We can try to make different breakouts for that.
Hey, Bruce, can you hear me? It's Amy.
Yes.
Yes, sorry. I don't want to override the whole conversation in the room there, though. But this is one little stupid little detail. That plot type smoothed area always threw me. How does the area get smoothed? Like I was picturing it, smoothed was a qualifier for the word area. But it's I don't know how to say it, but it's
a smooth line plus filled area.
Exactly. Anyway,
yes, there is a line and a smoothed line,
right?
And then there's a area and a smoothed area, but it should be a line, smooth line with area, or line with fill, and smooth line with fill. Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, minor comment, but it really did throw me for a long time. I was like, oh, I never heard of that plot type. What is that?
Yeah. All right, thanks, Amy.
Thank you. We'll talk more.
Yep, we're on coffee break now.
Yep, bye-bye.